Hello everyone. It's me, Arden Lee. I'm back today with another video, and in today's video, we're going to talk about how to handle emotional trauma. First, if you have not yet done so already, I would love to invite you to subscribe to my channel. So go ahead and hit that button and stay connected with me. Let me know what you think. Like my videos if you like them. And let me know in the comments how this is hitting for you and whether it's useful. Let me know what topics you would love to see me speak about in the future, so I can also get in there and help you with the issues that you personally are going through right now. Let me know. There's very little that I love more than solving things and figuring things out. Finding those hacks for how to live a better, happier, and more successful life. So today we're going to talk about how to handle emotional trauma. And the first thing that I'm going to go ahead and point out is that all trauma is emotional in some way. Even physical trauma is going to have an effect on your emotions. So even though this video is specifically titled How to Handle Emotional Trauma, just remember that any kind of trauma you go through, any change in your experience, anything that activates that fight, flight, freeze, fawn reactions, whichever ones you're dealing with, that is going to show up in your emotions as well. And what's important about handling trauma and moving forward from it is dealing with those emotions and accepting them, acknowledging them, processing them, alchemizing them, and ultimately learning from them. So you want to make sure that you're dealing with your emotions no matter what. There's definitely a lot of people in our society that are now evolving into, with the help of the collective consciousness, are evolving into a paradigm where they are more comfortable dealing with their feelings and emotions and talking them out rather than just repressing them like before. There was a meme I saw going around. It was like a tweet from somewhere, and it was saying how the boomer generation, the baby boomers, their attitudes are like, oh, these millennials are all so weak. Back in my day, we just repressed our feelings and held them in our bodies and stored them and acted like we were emotionally crippled as a result. Like in my day, we were tough. And I'm paraphrasing that, whoever wrote that first, but it stuck with me for a while now, and I'm so happy that we are getting to a place where in our society we have more systems set up to help people with their emotional support, to help people with processing and dealing with their emotions rather than just repressing them, right? Back in the day, it used to be like all Don Draper 24/7, it was all like, let's not communicate with our partners and let's not share, not let anyone in, and let's just bottle it all up and act like everything is fine. Certainly in the culture in the 50s and 60s, there was a lot of that, in the nuclear family. But even that gets passed on generationally. People who are our grandparents have a certain way of understanding how to do things. They pass those ways of doing things onto our parents, and our parents can pass those things on to us as well. So it's really important for us to consciously learn how to deal with our emotions when we've had something bad happen to us. So first I'm going to say what not to do. What not to do is don't just act like nothing happened to you. Don't act like life is just going to go on as normal, because you are denying the reality that is happening in your body and the reality that is happening in your feelings. If you try to go around and act like the world is the same as it was the day before, you're denying that. You're lying to yourself, and you're just essentially putting off dealing with your trauma until later. Now, if you are in a situation where you do have to put off dealing with something until later, I absolutely understand that. So many of us do that in order to survive. So if you're in that space where you're like, I have to survive in the moment, I can't deal with this right now, I have to repress it and put it in a box somewhere to be dealt with and healed later, I don't want anyone to feel any guilt or shame over that, because you got to do what you got to do. And certainly I did that a lot. Certainly when I was living in New York and I was in my mid-20s, I dealt with a lot of trauma and a lot of stress that I had to pull myself up and out of, pretty much by myself. I would say by myself, because I was also in, I was also in and out of abusive relationships. So my relationships were not really helping me to pull. If anything, they were actually, dragging me back down and draining my energy and my resources. And I definitely compartmentalized a whole lot of pain. I repressed a whole lot of things that I didn't know were happening to me at the time, because my body just was like, we can't deal with this right now. Like, you have to pay your rent, so you need to just suck it up and get over with. And and uh and so I don't want anyone to feel any shame around that. If that's how your body is reacting or has reacted, just know that it will come up for you to deal with later. And so essentially what starts to happen is, if you get backed up, it's kind of like getting your email inbox backed up. You're going to have to go through that eventually, or else you're just going to have an inbox with about 10,000 emails in it. And Lord knows, like, there are plenty of us out there with those too. So, so eventually, if you are set on a healing journey and you really want your body to be somewhere that you are comfortable, what's necessary for you to do is to be able to clear out all those stored and stuck emotions that you've repressed from not dealing with your trauma when it happened. And that's absolutely, like I said, if you are in survival mode and you have to do what you have to do, that's absolutely fine, and you can deal with it later. And that's also what I did, because I didn't have the means of coping with my trauma at the time. But as I am talking to you in this video right now, if I had the opportunity to advise you right now, as I do, I would tell you that it's much easier. It's going to be much easier for you going forward if you have a support team and you have the resources and the wherewithal to deal with your trauma as it happens and process it and move it out of your body. So it's kind of like this idea of, if we have a whole bunch of trauma that we don't know how to deal with at the time. I use this metaphor a lot, but it really rings true for me. It's sort of like it all clogs up in our body, and our body becomes like a house on an episode of Hoarders, that we're just like clogged with all this trash, and our body becomes a place that we don't really want to live anymore, because being in it means being surrounded by all this crap, right? And then that's when that happens so much, for me, it resulted in a lot of dissociation and a lot of desensitization. I was just like, well, I'm just not going to feel anything. My body's just kind of, adapting to things as we go on. And I dissociated a lot from my experience as a result. Again, that is a coping mechanism for survival, but it's not a particularly pleasant one. And it's really not, hi Virgil, it's really not a way to fully live your life. So, so if you have that opportunity, moving out those stored and stuffed emotions takes your body from being a house on Hoarders to being a regular house where maybe you just have to take out some extra trash sometimes. Maybe you just have to do a little cleanup. Someone came by and graffitied or vandalized your home, and now it's up to you to clean it up. Essentially, the longer you let it sit there, the less you're going to want to deal with it, and the more it's going to come back for you, in the future to deal with. And again, especially with the right team of professionals, you absolutely can deal with it in the future, and that is a very valid choice. But what we really want to be able to do is we want to get used to just being in our bodies and being able to take out the trash. Right, Virgil? This is Virgil, for any of you who have not yet met him. He's my little assistant. So how do you do this, essentially? How do you process your trauma? The first thing is acknowledging what happened to you. When I had some of the worst things that I've ever gone through happen to me, I had so much shame around them, so much shame around, like, I should have prevented this, or somehow this is my fault, or I don't, somehow I'm guilty for this, or people are going to see me as less than because I've had this happen to me, so I didn't tell anyone. And it became this kind of monster, right? There's another saying, that if you hide your stuff in the closet, it's going to turn into a monster, right? If you guys know from my song Tango off the Who Can You Trust EP by my band Arden and the Wolves, I have a lyric in there, what you hide in the closet will turn into the monster that you fear. So if you repress something, if you store it away, it gets scarier and scarier, essentially. So you want to make sure that you're dealing with it. And that would have been difficult for me at the time, but it's important to have people around you who love you unconditionally and who support you. And if that's not something that you have yet, You want to make sure that you're really attuning yourself to finding those friends, finding those people in your life, whether it's friends, family members, your chosen family, whether it's people that, you're in the same sort of self-improvement or personal growth, space with. Then you want to, you want to surround yourself with those people so that that there are people in your life that you can go to them with anything and not have to feel shame around it, that they will hold you and support you in that space of healing, and that they'll help you with your journey. So it's important to have your support team, first of all, so that you can start to move those emotions out right away. You can start to talk about what happened to you. People don't really understand why talk therapy works so well, why just the act of talking about something can make such a difference in the way that our bodies feel. But if I were to explain it based on my own understanding, it really means that we're taking that emotion that's been stuck inside of us and we're moving it outward into something. We're moving it, by speaking it, we're moving it out of our bodies, and we're starting to, it's quite literally processing. It's quite, it's quite literally, getting it out of us and speaking it into existence, and then it's not staying stored in our bodies anymore. Just telling our stories can be incredibly, incredibly healing. And from there, looking at everything that happened and having self-forgiveness and self-compassion. So many of us have terrible things happen to us, and even though it wasn't our fault, we still blame ourselves, or we say, if I had just been smarter, if I had just not done this, if I had just not done that. It's really important to look at all the circumstances that caused you to make the decisions that you did, and forgive yourself, because you were doing the best that you knew at the time, and it's not your fault what happened to you. It's absolutely the fault of the person who perpetrated it on you. They are 100% responsible for that. But also, if you want to look at all of the factors that caused you to make the decisions around that incident, and look at that in terms of how you can better optimize your beliefs for decision making in the future in ways that are that protect yourself a little bit more, or that that are just a little savvier, a little wiser about the world, where you don't lose your innocence and you don't lose your heart and you don't close yourself off from people, but you are able to better practice discernment. You are better able to say, hey, I see that red flag right there. I know what that is, and I know what that looks like, and I'm going to stay away from that situation. That's not a means of blaming ourselves, you guys. That's actually a means of changing our narratives in order to better protect and preserve ourselves, and to because again, it's not our fault that something happened to us, but we can start to look at the ways that that we can take better care of ourselves in the future, now that we maybe know a little better, or know that there are people out there or environments out there that do not have our best interests at heart. And that is something that, even though again it's not our fault, it is under our control to a certain degree, which environments and people we choose to surround ourselves with. Certainly our economic resources are a big factor in that, and certainly not everyone has the privilege to move out of environments that are harmful or dangerous to them. And some of us do have that power, but we feel that we don't, because of learned helplessness, because of our feelings of our limited viewpoints and our limitations that we place on ourselves, which also can come through trauma as well. So looking at that, experiencing that self-compassion, self-forgiveness, the same way that we would forgive a friend, who had also gone through a really difficult time, and looking to at what parts of our own beliefs we want to adjust in order to move on and feel healthier about our safety and the decisions that we make in the future, in a way that doesn't place any blame on us, but rather empowers us to be better at our own self-care, essentially. And from there, certainly working with professionals is a really good idea, whether you want to work with a therapist or you want to work with a coach. But talking things out and giving it a name, and then deciding, from here on, okay, I moved through that, and here's what I'm going to do for the future in order to better empower myself to choose corners of reality where I feel safe, to choose corners of reality, whether it's people or places, or things that I'm doing, or habits, or beliefs that I've formed, to make those choices from an empowered standpoint, in order to move on and feel better, right? The important thing is, moving those emotions out of our bodies, speaking them into existence, processing them, doing all the thinking and analyzing about them with a professional or with friends, you know, ideally with both, that we can possibly do, and then making space and saying, okay, I'm done with it. I'm done with that experience. I've had that, and I'm ready to move on to better things. And so this is the important part too. When you've moved that energy of emotional trauma out of your body, it creates a vacuum, and you want to look into that vacuum next and say, now what can we fill this with? Because I want to fill this with happiness, and I want to fill this with laughter and joyousness, and maybe even romance and passion and creativity and work that I love, et cetera, et cetera. So if you fill up that vacuum with the things that are positive and aligned with what you want, then it's unlikely that other energies are going to come in and you know, and keep you in the gravity of that same pattern, right? Of course, there's no guarantee, no matter how amazing your life is and how much you take care of yourself. It is always possible to have someone else's reality rub up against yours and for you to be traumatized by it. And there's no reason to blame yourself for that. But the more that it happens to you, and the more you get familiar with your own sense of emotional processing, with your body's own system of processing emotions and processing traumas, the more that things may happen to you, and then you may just say like, oh, I got this one already. I know how to do this one. Yeah, it sucks, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do the thing that I do. I'm going to talk it out, and I'm going to get support, and I'm going to you know, utilize all of my self-care techniques and start to feel better in my body again. And I know that I can move on from this. It's really, it's about, you know, when we talk about living a life that aligns us to hopefully prevent as much trauma as possible so that we can live in our happiness. It's not ever a fail-safe guarantee against experiencing trauma, but what it is it's an understanding that whatever happens to you, you have that resilience, and that you are the master of your own body, and you are the master of your own emotions, and that you're going to be able to move through it and receive the support you need in order to heal and move forward and gain your life back again. So I hope this was helpful to you. Let me know, and I will see you in the next video.